What would you do if you heard your own death announced live on air before it happened? The rain outside the station hadn't stopped for hours. It hammered against the dusty single-pane windows, masking the distant hum of the old transmitter tower that stood like a skeleton against the dark sky. I was on my fourth cup of stale coffee and halfway through my nightly Midnight Confession segment when Line 6 lit up. No caller ID, no number, just caller unknown, flashing in that ghostly green. "This is WNTR, you're on the air," I said, trying to keep my voice smooth. My audience was small but loyal, the kind of people who lived for sleepless nights and late-night secrets. The line hissed. Static rolled through the headset, sharp and brittle, like the crackle of burning paper. Then a voice, calm, low, measured. 203, Pine Ridge Apartments, 3rd floor, apartment 302, male, 47 years old. He'll be dead in exactly 6 minutes. I sat up straight, blinking at the console. "Sorry, who is this?" The voice didn't answer the question. 6 minutes, it repeated, then hung up. I forced a laugh into the mic. "All right, folks, someone's been watching too many crime shows." But as I moved on to the next segment, I couldn't shake it. The voice was too steady, too confident. By 12:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't the studio line. It was my personal cell. A news alert. Breaking. Man found dead at Pine Ridge Apartments. No signs of forced entry. My stomach flipped. The address was exact. The time? 12:20, 6 minutes after the call. The next night, I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe the caller knew something and decided to spook me. At 1:04 a.m., Line 6 lit up again. I hesitated before answering. "This is WNTR. Corner of Hillcrest and 9th. A woman, 32, hit and run, 4 minutes." My throat went dry. "Listen, who are you? How do you know this?" The static swelled, drowning half my words. Then, silence. 4 minutes later, my news alert pinged. "Accident at Hillcrest and 9th. Victim, 32-year-old female. Pronounced dead at the scene." By the third night, I didn't want to pick up Line 6 at all, but I did. "Your turn." That's all the voice said. 3 words. I froze. What the hell does that mean? "Your death. 8 minutes from now. You'll be alone in the studio. No one will believe you when you try to warn them." The air felt heavy. I swear the fluorescent light above me flickered. "Listen, I'm calling the police. This is..." The line went dead. I spent the next 8 minutes pacing the booth, checking the locks, peering through the glass windows into the dark hallway outside. Nothing happened. By 1:20, my heart had slowed. Maybe it was a sick prank. Maybe they wanted me paranoid. Then, at 1:23, the transmitter tower outside groaned. The sound vibrated through the walls, like metal under strain. And in the hum, I heard my own voice. Not an echo. Not a playback. It was me, live, speaking words I hadn't said yet. "If you're hearing this, it's already too late." That was the first night I thought about quitting. But quitting wasn't an option anymore. Because the next call wasn't going to be about someone else. It was going to be about me. The next day I didn't sleep. Every creak of my apartment building, every passing car in the street below, it all felt like a countdown. I told myself I wasn't going back to the station. Not tonight, not ever. But as the rain started again, hammering against my windows like impatient fingers, my phone buzzed with a single text. "You have to come in." No number, no name, just those words. I ignored it. 2 minutes later, my apartment went dark. The hum of my fridge stopped. The clock on the microwave blinked off. Then, faint through the rain, I heard the low groan of the transmitter tower. When I finally gave in and drove to WNTR, the building was as silent as a mausoleum. My key stuck in the lock for a second before turning. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the smell of old wiring and damp carpet. The on-air light above the booth was already glowing red. I froze. No one else had a key. I stepped into the booth, heart thudding, and the first thing I saw was the mic on, and someone had been speaking into it. My own voice filled the room, but it wasn't live. It was coming from the playback system. I pressed stop and replayed it. Corner of Hillcrest and 9th, 4 minutes. She won't see the car coming. She'll be looking right at you. I remembered saying those words, but I never did. The first hour of the show was uneventful. Just a few regulars calling in to tell their strange little stories. I kept glancing at Lean 6, but it stayed dark. Then, at exactly 1:11 a.m., it lit up. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, or maybe fear, won. "This is WNTR," I said, voice shaky. The static hissed. Then the caller spoke. "You didn't die last night because I chose not to kill you, but someone else did." My stomach dropped. "What do you want from me?" "To listen." "Listen to what?" "Your own future. You're part of the signal now. You've always been." "What signal?" I demanded. The static surged so loud I had to rip off the headset. When it cleared, I heard something faint in the background. Breathing. Slow, deep, and close. I ran a quick check on the security feed. All 4 cameras were up. Lobby, hallway, transmitter room, booth. Everything looked empty. Then, for less than a second, the hallway camera flickered. When it came back, a shadow stood at the far end. Tall, still, facing the camera. I blinked, and it was gone. By 2 a.m., my nerves were shot. I decided to end the show early. As I began to wrap up, line 6 flashed again. This time, the caller didn't wait for me to speak. 2 minutes! I slammed my fist on the desk. Enough with the games. 2 minutes, and you'll see the face of the one who's been here all along. I looked up at the glass window separating me from the dark hallway, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing just beyond the glass, barely visible in the dim light. No features, no movement, just watching. I grabbed the studio phone to call 911. Deadline. I tried my cell. No signal. The only sound in the booth was my own breathing, and the low hum of the transmitter tower outside. Then the on-air light above me began to flicker. I turned back toward the console and froze. The mic was on again. But this time, I wasn't the one speaking. A voice, low, distorted, and far too close, was whispering directly into it. And it was saying my name, over and over. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The sound of my own name, whispered over and over, wrapped around me like ice water. "Who is this?" I demanded, voice trembling. The whisper paused, and then, with a sickening clarity, it said, "You've already met me." Before I could respond, the on-air light blinked off and the room went silent. I yanked the headphones from my ears and shoved back from the console. My chest felt tight, my hands numb. I tore into the archives room at the back of the station. Dust-coated file boxes were stacked high against the walls, labeled with dates that went back decades. The whispering voice's words kept replaying in my head. "You've already met me." I started digging. Old incident reports, logbooks, FCC notices. Then I found it. WNTR archive, October 1999. Inside, there was only one item, a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local radio DJ disappears live on air. Final broadcast still unexplained." I scanned the article. The missing DJ's name was Elliot Maris. According to the report, he was doing his regular overnight shift when he went completely silent mid-sentence. The mic stayed on for hours, capturing only the faint sound of static. Police found the booth locked from the inside. Elliot was gone. No forced entry, no sign of struggle. The strangest detail? The article mentioned dozens of listeners calling the station that night, saying they'd heard something in the static, a voice telling them where to go, what to do. No one could agree on what it said. I sat back, my pulse pounding. This wasn't just some creepy prank caller. This station had a history of whatever this was. The thought hit me like a brick. What if line 6 wasn't even connected to a phone line? I rushed back to the booth, traced the cord from line 6's button, and found it led straight into the wall. No junction box, no wiring panel. It just disappeared into concrete. By now, my skin was crawling. I wanted out. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. But the hallway lights were off, pitch black, and from the far end of that darkness, I heard the faint sound of someone tapping. Slow, deliberate, metal on metal. It was coming from the transmitter room. I should have walked away. I should have run out of that building and never looked back. But instead, I found myself pushing the transmitter room door open. The smell hit me first. Burnt dust and something faintly metallic, like blood. The massive transmitter loomed in the center of the room, humming faintly. Its red signal light pulsed like a heartbeat. On the floor beneath it lay a reel-to-reel tape recorder. It was spinning. I crouched down, hands shaking, and pressed the stop button. The tape was labeled simply, "Play Me." Against my better judgment, I threaded it through and hit play. A burst of static filled the air. Then, beneath it, a voice. "Corner of Hillcrest and 9th, 4 minutes. She won't see the car coming." The same words I'd heard in the playback earlier. Except now, at the very end of the recording, the voice added something new. "Unless you stop it this time." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a replay of something that had happened. It was telling me something that was going to happen. I glanced at my watch. 4 minutes from now. Without thinking, I bolted from the transmitter room, out the side door, and into the rain. My car's engine roared to life as I tore down slick streets toward Hillcrest and 9th. When I got there, the intersection was empty. Street lamps flickered in the rain. Then I saw her, a woman crossing the street, hood pulled up against the storm. Headlights appeared from the left, moving too fast. I slammed my horn and swerved into the road, blocking the car's path. Tires screamed against wet asphalt. The driver leaned out, cursing at me. But the woman had already hurried to the curb, glancing back with wide, confused eyes. I sat there, heart hammering, watching the other car speed off into the night. Back at the station, I dripped water onto the console as I tried to process what had just happened. The on-air light was glowing again. Line 6 lit up. I stared at it, knowing exactly what would happen if I answered. I picked it up anyway. The voice was smiling when it spoke. "Good, you're starting to understand. Now let's see what you'll do when it's your life on the tape." The words rang in my head. Your life on the tape. For hours, I just sat there, staring at the mixing board, listening to the rain on the roof. Every so often, my eyes drifted to the reel-to-reel recorder in the transmitter room, wondering if another tape had appeared. When I finally worked up the nerve to check, the room was empty. The recorder sat silent. For a moment, I felt relief, until I noticed something scratched into the metal casing. 4 words, jagged, uneven, like they'd been carved with a knife. Stay on the air. That night, I couldn't sleep. Even at home, the quiet didn't feel safe. My apartment was above an old hardware store, the kind of place where you could hear every creak in the floorboards below. At 3:17 a.m., I heard the phone ring. Not my cell, my landline. The one I hadn't even plugged in. I picked it up slowly. Static hissed in my ear, and then a low, rhythmic clicking. It took me a second to realize it wasn't random. It was Morse code. I grabbed my laptop and quickly searched a translation chart. The message was short. Play me. The next night at the station, there it was. Another tape waiting in the transmitter room. No label this time. Just black plastic and an unspooled end, like someone had been in a hurry. I threaded it onto the machine and hit play. Static. Then a voice. The same whisper. Door unlocked. 2:46 a.m. You won't hear them come in. My stomach twisted. 2:46. Tonight. That was my apartment. The logical part of my brain screamed at me to call the police, to get out of town, to do anything but go home. But I also remembered the last tape, how specific it had been, and how real. I decided to set a trap. At 2:40 a.m., I sat in the dark of my apartment, every light off, my phone recording. I left the front door unlocked, exactly as the tape said. The rain had stopped, but the city was silent, the kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat. 2:45. 2:46. The door creaked open. A tall shadow stepped inside, silhouetted against the dim glow from the streetlights outside. They moved quietly, deliberate, toward my bedroom. I stood in the hallway, gripping the tire iron I'd taken from my car. When they reached the doorway, I flicked on a flashlight. The beam hit a pale, narrow face. It was a man, maybe in his late 40s, wearing an old WNTR jacket. He froze, squinting in the light. "You're not supposed to see me yet," he said calmly. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded. Instead of answering, he smiled, a thin, brittle thing, and reached into his jacket. I tensed, ready to swing. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a cassette tape. He set it on the floor between us, pushed it toward me with his foot, and whispered, "You're late for your shift." Then he turned and walked out. By the time I got to the street, he was gone. The tape sat on my kitchen counter for hours before I worked up the courage to play it. It started with my own voice. "If you're hearing this, I'm already gone." I felt my blood go cold. The rest of the tape was a single looping sound, the faint tapping of a finger against a microphone. Back at the station, things got worse. Listeners started calling in, not about music requests, but about dreams. They described hearing me talking in their sleep. They remembered my voice giving them directions, telling them to be somewhere at a certain time. One caller said she'd followed my instructions and found a stranger bleeding on the sidewalk. Another claimed she'd avoided a fatal car accident because of me. None of those things had ever happened. I hadn't spoken to any of them, but they were all convinced. Then one night, I walked into the booth and found a Polaroid on the console. It was me, sitting in the booth, wearing headphones, talking into the mic. The timestamp on the photo, tomorrow's date. The on-air light flicked on by itself. Line 6 lit up. I picked it up, my hand shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. The whisper was softer this time, almost affectionate. "You're ready for the next broadcast. This one's not about saving anyone." That voice, that calm, patient whisper, it was never asking me to do anything before. It was telling me. I should have slammed the phone down, walked out of the station, never looked back. But I didn't. Something in my chest, like a cold, invisible hand, kept me rooted to the chair. The on-air light glowed blood red. The microphone hissed softly in my headphones. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. And then, I spoke. I don't even remember the first words that came out. They weren't mine. The cadence was wrong, the rhythm strange, like I was reading a script in a language I barely understood but still somehow knew. I remember numbers, street names, landmarks. I gave times, exact times. "Be at the corner of 7th and Iron at 2:19 a.m. You'll know when to move. Leave your door unlocked tonight. At precisely 3:04 a.m., go outside." No emotion, no hesitation, just directions. When I came out of the trance, if that's what it was, I was breathing hard. My mouth was dry and the headphones were slick with sweat. It felt like I'd just run a marathon without leaving my chair. The next day, the news broke. 2 people dead. A woman hit by a speeding car. A man found frozen in an alley, barefoot, wearing only a shirt despite the winter cold. Both were discovered exactly at the places and times I had given on air. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. Who the hell would believe me? But the calls kept coming. Some were excited, some were terrified. All of them claimed my voice had saved them, or damned someone they knew. One guy told me he'd heard my voice say, "Don't get on the bus." The bus crashed 15 minutes later. Another swore I'd told her to stand at a particular intersection at 4:12 a.m., where she watched a man get pushed into traffic. That night, I locked the station door, barricaded the booth, and swore I wouldn't speak into the mic. I sat there, arms folded, staring at the dead on-air light. At 12:30 a.m., it flickered on by itself. Every light in the room dimmed. I heard breathing through the headphones, and then I heard my own voice. "Why are you resisting?" The recording continued. "It's easier if you just listen. You've already been doing this for longer than you think." I ripped the headphones off and bolted into the transmitter room. The reel-to-reel recorder was spinning, both reels moving in perfect sync. No one was there. I yanked the power cord from the wall. The machine kept spinning. When I finally managed to stop it, the tape slid loose and fell to the floor. There was something written on the underside in thick black marker. "We hear you." That phrase haunted me the rest of the night. Not "I hear you." We. Who the hell was we? 2 nights later, I got my answer. It was a stormy Tuesday, the kind of night no sane person would leave home. The station was silent, save for the low hum of the equipment. At exactly 1 a.m., the door to the booth opened. 5 people walked in. They were all wearing the same WNTR jackets as the man who'd broken into my apartment. No one spoke. They just stood there watching me. Finally, one of them, a woman with slick black hair and eyes so pale they looked almost white, spoke. "You're the strongest conduit we've had in years." I just stared at her. "Conduit for what?" She smiled faintly. "They've been waiting to speak. You've been chosen to let them." "Them who?" I asked. She tilted her head. "You'll see." The group filed out as silently as they'd entered. When I ran after them, the hallway was empty, the front door locked from the inside. But in the transmitter room, there was another tape waiting for me. No label, no markings. I played it. There was no static this time, no whisper, only a low, layered voice, like dozens of people speaking in unison. "The broadcast begins tomorrow, midnight. You will open the way." The air in the room felt heavy, thick enough to choke on. When I stepped back into the booth, I noticed something new. The digital clock that always showed the current time now read E0 U, and it wasn't moving. The frozen clock never moved. I sat there staring at C000, waiting for it to tick over, but the seconds never came. That's when I noticed something else. The windows. We were 6 stories up, but outside every pane was black. Not night black, but an unnatural void, as if the station was floating in nothing. The air was cold enough to make my breath mist. I reached for my phone to call someone, anyone, but the screen wouldn't turn on. Every piece of electronics in the booth was dead, except for the on-air light. It glowed a deeper red than I'd ever seen. Then the headphones crackled. No static this time, just a steady, low thrum like the hum of an old engine far underground. Over it, voices began to emerge. Dozens at first, then hundreds, then too many to count. Some were whispering, others shouting, some weeping like they'd been lost for years. I couldn't make out words, until suddenly I could. "You're late." It was that same layered voice from the tape. I didn't speak. "You will begin the broadcast now," it continued. "Read from the page in front of you." I glanced at the desk. There was no paper there, until I blinked and one appeared. A single sheet, handwritten in thick, jagged strokes. The ink looked wet. The first line was a sentence I didn't understand. "The gates are heavier than the mouths." Beneath it, a list of locations, times, names. Some of the names I recognized. Old neighbors, a coworker I hadn't seen in years, my mother. I pushed the paper away. "I'm not reading this." There was a pause on the other end of the signal, then a deep, slow laugh. "You already have." The paper twitched slightly, like it was breathing. I picked it up again, and the handwriting was different now. It was my handwriting. Suddenly, the on-air light flared brighter, and the microphone pulled my voice out before I could stop it. I wasn't reading.
but words poured out. North side of the bridge. 2 minutes past the hour. The shadow will take the first. Third house on East Hollow Road. Open your door and wait. You'll be given a gift. My throat burned like I'd been screaming for hours. My chest ached. The moment I stopped, the phone started ringing. Every single line. I answered one at random. A woman's voice, hoarse, panicked. "You told me to wait outside. Something came. It wasn't human. It's still in my house." She screamed. The line went dead.
I ripped the phone from the wall. It kept ringing. Outside the booth, I caught a flicker of movement. I swear I saw someone standing just beyond the glass, except their body was wrong. Too tall, too thin, the head bent at an angle that made my stomach turn. It stayed for maybe 3 seconds, then vanished like it had never been there. I turned back to the desk and froze. The paper was gone. In its place was a cassette tape, no label, just a strip of black magnetic tape dangling loose as if it had been used too many times. Against my better judgment, I pushed it into the deck. Silence. Then a man's voice, shaky, desperate, came through. "If you're hearing this, it's already in you. It's been in all of us, but it's stronger in you. They're not from the airwaves, they are the airwaves. Stop transmitting or it will finish." There was a loud, wet snap, and the voice cut off. The lights flickered. When they came back on, I wasn't in the booth anymore. I was standing in the middle of a 2-lane road, fog curling around my legs. No buildings, no station. Just silence, except for a faint static that seemed to be coming from inside my head. In the distance, headlights appeared. As they drew closer, I saw there was no car, just the lights, floating, attached to nothing. They stopped a few feet in front of me, and then they blinked, like eyes. The static in my head grew louder, sharper, until it was almost words again. "Midnight is every hour now. Begin the call." I woke up, back in the booth, gasping for breath. But the clock still read 000, and there was another sheet of paper waiting for me. This time, there was only one line written. "Your mother is next." I stared at the words until they stopped looking like words at all. Your mother is next. I wanted to tear the page apart, burn it, anything. But when I reached for it, the paper crumbled into dust between my fingers. The dust didn't fall to the desk. It floated upward, like it was being pulled toward the ceiling. That's when I realized the booth wasn't the same anymore. The walls had stretched taller, darker. The soundproof padding wasn't padding. It looked like old skin, stretched and nailed into place. The on-air light above the door pulsed like a living thing. I had one thought. I have to get to her. I bolted for the door. But the handle burned my hand the second I touched it. The metal wasn't hot, it was cold. So cold it tore skin when I yanked away. From the corner of the booth, the headphones hissed. "If you leave, she'll be alone when it comes." I didn't think. I ripped the headphones off the hook and hurled them at the wall. They hit with a sound like breaking glass. And then the static spilled out anyway, crawling into my ears even without a speaker. It wasn't sound anymore. It was thoughts. "You're already late. Every second now is her last second. You could call. You could warn her. She won't believe you." I lunged for the phone on the desk and nearly froze when I saw it had already dialed a number. Not by me. It was her number. The line clicked open before I could hang up. "Hello?" It was her voice, calm, too calm. "Mom, listen to me. Lock every door, every window. Don't open the..." She cut me off with a sigh. "You always were dramatic. I'm fine. In fact, I've been meaning to tell you, someone dropped by earlier. Said you'd be calling." The line filled with that same layered, unnatural tone. "She's with us now." I screamed into the phone, "Get out of there!" But the call went dead. In the silence that followed, something tapped on the glass of the booth. Slow, deliberate, 3 times. I turned, expecting to see the tall, bent figure again. But it wasn't there. Instead, My mother's face was pressed against the glass. Her eyes were wide, too wide, her mouth open just enough to show every tooth. Her breath fogged the window, but the fog didn't fade. It clung there, writhing, until it formed words. "You should have read faster." She didn't move. She didn't blink. I backed away, and that's when I saw her hands. They were wrong. Too many fingers, each joint bending in ways they shouldn't. Her head tilted slowly, and I swear I heard her neck crack in 3 different places. The lights cut out. Total darkness. I reached for my phone again, forgetting it was dead. But when I looked, it was on now, glowing with a faint red light. On the screen, a countdown. 00:59, 57, 00:59, 56. 1 hour. Beneath it, final broadcast. I didn't understand until the walls of the booth started to breathe. They expanded, contracted, in time with the pulse of the on-air light. And from outside the glass, I heard voices. Not through speakers, real voices. Some were screaming my name. Others were whispering things I can't repeat. And one of them was hers. The static in my head surged until it became words again. "They're all listening now. Say the words. Bring them in." I shook my head, pressed my palms over my ears. No, I'm not doing this." The static hissed like anger. "You were always going to do this. The broadcast began before you were born. The moment you speak, the gate opens. The moment you stop, it closes on you." I don't know why, but I believed it. The countdown on my phone hit 0:45-0, and I realized if I didn't speak, I had 45 minutes before whatever was outside came in. If I did speak, I'd be letting them out. Somewhere beyond the walls, something massive began to move. I could hear the floor groaning under its weight, the air trembling with each step. The glass shook. The on-air light flared so bright I thought it would burst, and then I saw the door handle slowly turn. The handle turned halfway, then stopped. Silence. My pulse was so loud in my ears it drowned out everything, until I realized the silence wasn't real. It was waiting. The static in my head whispered softer now. "Say the words." I glanced at the countdown on my phone. 0:44:12, 0:44:11. Every instinct screamed stall, buy time. But the air in the booth was thick, heavy, almost solid, like I was breathing through water. My knees buckled under the pressure. I crawled toward the console, trying to reach the emergency channel switch. Maybe if I cut the signal? But the console had changed. The dials and buttons weren't plastic anymore. They were bone. Thin, pale, human bone. The faders were made of teeth. I froze, staring at it, and the reflection in the console's glass face looked back at me. Except, it wasn't me. It had my eyes, but they were black from edge to edge. My mouth moved before I could stop it. "You've been on the air for 30 years. I stumbled back. No, that's not true." The thing in the reflection smiled. "You were born in this booth." A memory slammed into my mind. Not mine, but I felt it. A woman, screaming into a microphone, the same on-air light glowing above her, and something tall and skinless, standing just outside the glass, nodding. The woman was my mother. The static surged again, almost gentle this time. "She opened the gate for you. Now you open it for us." I looked at the countdown. You're 38. Diroma 38, the 1. The door handle turned again. This time it didn't stop. The door creaked open just enough for a shadow to slide in. A shape too thin to be human, but too tall to be anything else. Its head brushed the ceiling, and its hands... God, those hands dragged along the floor like wet ropes. It didn't rush me. It didn't need to. It walked to the console and pointed at the mic. Then it pointed at me. The static roared in my skull. "Speak. Tell them about the voices. Tell them what you saw. They will listen. They will invite us." I don't know why, but I thought about the first time I ever sat in this chair. The quiet hum of the console, The thrill of knowing someone was out there, listening in the dark. Back then, I thought broadcasting was about connection. Now I knew it was about possession. The shadow leaned close enough for me to feel the cold dripping off its skinless form. The smell of rust filled my lungs. "If you don't speak," it whispered, "the gate stays shut, and you stay here. Forever." The countdown. 0031:10, 031:09. I had half an hour to decide. Speak and damn the world. Stay silent and be trapped here until something worse than death found me. I made my choice. I sat down, adjusted the mic, and hit the on-air switch. The red light blazed, bathing the booth in blood. My voice shook as I spoke. This is the last broadcast. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt it. A ripping, tearing sensation, like the walls of the booth were splitting open, but not into the hallway, into everywhere. I saw houses, streets, bedrooms, people sitting alone in the dark, listening to the static in their earbuds, their radios, their phones. And behind each of them, a shadow. The thing beside me began to melt into the console, its bones snapping, rearranging into wires and knobs. The air outside the booth rippled like heat, and the voices, God, the voices, filled every frequency, every speaker, every device. Then the countdown hit, "Wiro, wiro, wiro." The on-air light shattered. I opened my eyes, and I was no longer in the booth. I was standing in 100 different places at once, in every living room, in every parked car, in every bedroom where someone had been listening. I was inside the static, and they could all hear me. The shadow's voice filled my head one last time. "Now, tell them your name." I felt my lips move. Somewhere far away in a forgotten radio tower that no longer had walls, a new broadcast began. Not mine. Yours. Because if you're hearing this, you're already part of it.